Can everybody hear me? Yes. All right, great. So first of all, thank you to IndyJam for having us, or having me. So indeed, I'm going to be talking to you today about my journey as a programmer, how I became a programmer, how I landed my internship, and how I saw the company grow from a small indie company in Belgium to this AAA studio in 7 studios worldwide. Next slide, please. There we are. So who am I? My name is Stijn Doyen. I'm a senior gateway programmer, and I started at Larian in 2014. So that's 11 years ago now. And I recently moved to Kuala Lumpur to work in the office here in KL to find new hires and mentor them so that we can grow a gameplay department here in Larian Studios in KL. So, who is Larian? For those of you who don't know, Larian Studios is an independent AAA company that was founded in 1996 in Belgium. And we have since then grown into a massive studio and 7 offices worldwide, including one right here in Kuala Lumpur. We are mostly known for focusing on deep RPGs with player agency and strong storytelling. And we develop all of our tools and our engine completely in-house with our own programmers, mostly done in C++. And then the games we're mostly known for are the Divinity franchise games, which start with Divine Divinity and Beyond Divinity. Then we had an action RPG, Divinity 2. We had an RTS RPG crossover called Dragon Commander. And then more recently, we kind of went back to our roots and made Divinity Original Sin and Original Sin 2, which were more top-down isometric RPGs again. And of course, most recently, Baldur's Gate 3, which won Game of the Year in 2023 and was met with a lot of critical acclaim. So, from player to programmer, how did I become a programmer? Well, I actually have to go back to the very, very humble beginnings when I was just a little kid. I got my first computer at age 5, and I was the first kid in class that also had internet. And I can tell you, in the 90s, that was really something. I had friends from school who would come over to my house just to see the computer and play these games, because it was like a whole world that opened in front of you. You had unlimited amount of games on the internet, including MMOs. The game I really loved was RuneScape, which was the first multiplayer RPG that I discovered. You were this adventurer and you could do quests and fight monsters, level skills. And I think that's one of the reasons why I really fell in love with RPGs. And in general, if you ask a kid what they want to do when they grow up, most of them say I want to become a policeman or a fireman or a doctor. But I just always said that I want to make games. And my parents were like, sure buddy, we'll make games, it's fine. But so yeah, the games the games I remember playing most as a kid was, first of all, Akuma Demon Spawn. It's a game that probably no one has ever heard of. But that was the game that came on the demo disc that we had. It was just the first hour of this top-down isometric RPG. And I still remember the sounds that the characters made when they died, the sound that the coins made when you picked them up. I must have played this demo hundreds of times. Then, of course, the original Diablo games, 1 and 2, I played a lot. I played it with my dad, played it with my brother. Then, as mentioned before, RuneScape. That's where the RPG really started showing it. And then a bit later, there was a game called Fable, made by Lionhead Studios. And that was the first time I really fell in love with the narrative storytelling in RPGs. Because I remember that there were points in this game where you really had to make choices about people, whether they lived or died. And then later on in the game, this was referenced. People got angry at you because somebody died, or they were thankful because you helped someone. And even back then, even though I was only 12 years old when it came out, I still remember thinking to myself, what if I saved this guy instead? Or what if I killed her instead? How would the game have adapted this? And so, these are basically how I was as a kid playing all these RPGs. The nice thing about being a kid is that your imagination is endless. So what I did is I basically invented real-life RPGs. I had a little sister. She was 4 or 5 years old at the time. I must have been 7 or 8. and we would play a game that we called video game, which was, we took any toys we had, could be Legos, could be Barbie dolls, Playmobil, something, and then my sister had her little avatar, which was like a little Lego puppet. We had a city, and she told me what she wanted to do, and then I would give her a quest. And if she succeeded the quest, she got more bricks that she could use to build a house. So back then I was already kind of making games. No, not that bad. Yes. I actually made my very first game in PowerPoint, because as I said, as a kid, everything is a game. I didn't know what PowerPoint was, it was slides. But I discovered that you could have buttons, and if you press a button, it could take you to a specific slide. So I made this little game of like 50 slides where you were in a room, and you could click on the desk, and it would take you to the slide of the desk. And you click on the book, it takes you to the slide where the book is open. And you have to find a key to then escape the room. So I was really obsessed with games and how they worked. So one day I just thought to myself, I didn't just want to play games, I really wanted to make them. So I did what any kid or person would do if they have access to the internet, of course. I went to Google, and I just typed in Google, how to make an RPG. Easy, right? But actually it was, because I found a piece of software called RPG Maker XP. It was released in 2004. And it was very simple. You just drew these maps using the tiles, you placed down characters, assigning dialogues, you had monsters you could fight, you had quests you could do. So it was like this toolbox to make the game of my dreams. And I made a game that started out in my classroom. All my classmates were there. My best friends were the heroes who would save the day. But very quickly I felt that what it had to offer, even though it had a lot, was quite limiting. Like I said, I had a background from playing a lot of RuneScape, so I wanted all these skills in there. I wanted to have fishing, I wanted to have mining, I wanted woodcutting. And this engine just didn't provide it to me. But then I discovered that there were scripting languages in there that used Ruby scripting. And you could write your own scripts to basically add functionality to the game. So I went through the scripts that were already in the engine, tried to study how it worked. I went online, looked for tutorials. And after spending days on end in a holiday between schools, I managed to write a very, very bad implementation of a fishing skill. So you go to the water with your fishing rod, you catch the fish, you get XP. So I was really proud of that. Showed all my friends again. They weren't that impressed, but to me it meant a lot. I was also very interested in websites. It's like, how do I get my own website? Because you're browsing the internet and I want one. How does that work? So I discovered that they're made in HTML. So I tried to learn myself HTML. They were really simple sites, just images that were centered, text that was bold. And then, of course, once again, I wanted to make a game. And then I noticed that you can't have interactivity in HTML. You need PHP for that. So, all right, fine. So yet another language. I had to study PHP all of a sudden. I looked up tutorials online, tried to do stuff, and after a lot of trial and error, I had this simple thing where you could log in and then send messages to people. I shared it again with the friends of my school. Once again, not impressed, but it was nice. But so yeah, I was really in love with just problem solving with code. And then at age 18, I was graduating high school, and I had to choose what I wanted to do for university. And luckily for me, in Belgium, we have a course called Digital Arts and Entertainment. It is one of the leading game development schools in the world, actually. And so you have to choose between different tracks, whether you want to focus on 2D arts, 3D arts, animation, or programming. So of course, I chose the programming course. It came with 5 semesters of C++. It was the first time I ever touched C++. I remember struggling with it a lot in the beginning. But I practiced a lot. And in my free time, I would use the skills that I learned to develop my own engine. It was, of course, not a great engine, but I just tried to, for fun, see what I could make and learn from it. And then one day at school, we had a guest lecture by none other than Stijn, who is the CEO and creative director at Larian Studios, who came to our school to talk about what it is that Larian does and what their vision was on the gaming industry. And there's one thing that he mentioned then that really struck a chord with me, because he mentioned that the ultimate goal of Larian Studios is to one day make the one RPG to dwarf them all. And it was at that day that I knew, okay, this is the company I want to be working for, because I want to be working on this one RPG to go off them all. But so yeah, Larian wasn't a big company back then. It was a small company in Belgium, in Ghent, just one office. So what I did is I started researching the company. Like, what can I find out about these guys? What type of games are they making? What are they doing? So I played their games. I played all of them, even the original Divine Divinity, which was released like way back in 2001. Even though it was like 2013, so the game was 12 years old by then, but I played it to get an idea of what it is that this company is doing. And I quickly noticed that, okay, these type of games that they're making, they are really the type of games that I love playing ever since I was a kid. So this is indeed the company that I might be looking for. And so what I did is I tailored my portfolio to their needs, so that when I applied for an internship, that I could maybe try to impress them. So I used all the skills I had, my website building skills, my coding skills, to make my website. I put my engine on there, I called it the Chibi engine. I thought it was a great name, not anymore. I made a GitHub that had my engine on it, that had the code. And then something else that I did that was funny, I didn't give them a regular CV. No, I made the C++ program, that was my resume. And I handed that in to just show like, hey, I'm a programmer, I know what I'm doing. And then I was invited to the company to do a test. I did a code test first, then I showed the technical director my portfolio, my code, the games, and somehow I managed to impress them with that, because great news, congratulations, you are the new intern at Larian Studios. Of course, to me that was a dream come true, because that was the start of my journey as a real game developer, the thing that I've been dreaming of ever since I was a kid. You can call my mom, she was very proud. But so yeah, that was 11 years ago now, and I have been a programmer at Larian Studios ever since. So I am what we call a gameplay programmer. But then the question might start, what is a gameplay programmer? If I can quote our director of gameplay, Artem Titov, he says, "We do not deliver code, we deliver features." So the gameplay programmers are the ones that basically make the toolbox that we give to the designers, to the artists, to the animators to make the game with. They come with the requests, and we turn these requests into working features. So you're constantly working together with all these different departments, listening to all their needs, and try to execute them as good as possible, but also in a way that is flexible. If somebody, for instance, says, I want to make a fireball, well, of course, you don't just make a fireball, you make something that is any projectile. So if tomorrow they want to make a water ball, or they want to make a bow and arrow, that they can reuse the same feature. Because that way the game is much more scalable as well. And we work across different disciplines. So, for instance, the UI, once again, we don't design UI, but we make sure that the UI ends up in the game. We don't make the animations, but we make sure that when people are walking, that the correct animations are playing. We have a scripting department that they are making most of the things that have to do with quests and behaviors, but the calls that they do with their scripting, those are made by the gameplay programmers. So it's like the link in the middle between the engine and the production departments. And so I had a very unique opportunity, because I basically joined an indie company that grew into a AAA company, which means that I have seen both sides of the spectrum. When DOS 1 released, like I said, we were about 50 people, which were 10 programmers in one studio. By the time DOS 2 released, we were already at 150 people, with 30 programmers in 4 studios. When BG3 released in 2023, we were about 500 people, of which 100 programmers in 6 studios. And now recently we've opened a 7th studio in Poland. So we're still expanding. But so the changes between working for an indie company and a AAA company are very noticeable. I've listed up a few. So of course, indie companies, you generally work in a small local team. Everyone is in the same room. If you need someone, you can go over them. That's good. Whereas now, as AAA Larian, we have a big international team. You might have to schedule meetings. You might have to have multiple people involved. It's just a completely different way of working. And as indie Larian, we had limited time for a lot of features, because like I said, for DOS1, there were only 10 programs, so you really had to try to get these features out there as soon as possible. Whereas now, we have a much bigger team, so we get to spend longer on a limited amount of features per person, which in the end makes them also more polished. We went from having simple features to much more complex features, because once again, as the team grows, there's more room for that, so you can have more complex features that work together. We went from what we like to call drive-by decisions, which is if you needed somebody's input, you would go over to them, talk to them, they would tell you something, just go back to your desk, and like what he said in that verbal meeting was decided, to having all kinds of meetings, plannings, generally more communication. Because with a team of 500 plus people, you can't just rely on one guy that said something to you in the hallway. Everything has to be properly planned. And generally speaking, when you work for an indie company, you have to be a bit of a jack of all trades. You have to be able to do multiple things. Whereas at a AAA company, you have more specialized developers. As an example, when I joined Larian, we didn't even have a gameplay department. We just had the programmers, and everyone did everything. Whereas now we have different gameplay departments, engine department, graphics department, tools department. So you're really specialized into your specific field. And these changes, of course, also affected the way that I work, and I had to develop myself to adapt to this way of working. So I used to be able to take tasks one by one. So I got a task from the programmer. I would just work on it until it was done. Then I go over to him and say, yo, I'm done. I get the next task. And that's the way we worked. Whereas now we're working with sprints and plannings, and we estimate how long our tasks will take, so that other teams also know that, okay, this feature will be coming out on that date, this feature will be done on that date. And so we have months-long planning. I already know what I'll be working on at the end of the year now, compared to just knowing what I'm doing right now. We went from working one feature per programmer to entire feature groups. So you no longer have, for instance, the one guy that is the pathfinding guy. No, now you have feature groups that involves even designers in case you have specific questions. It has the animators that have to do with the animations that it needs. You have multiple programmers that each take on subparts of that. We went from having just a small QA department as our line of defense to having all kinds of processes. So back in the DOS1 day, when I wrote a feature, you just test it yourself, and if it's done, you check it in. You just pray to God that it doesn't break. And we had 2 QA developers who basically try to break your game. If they find bugs, it comes back to you. Whereas now we have all kinds of unit testing, which is just testing of the code that it actually does what you think it does. We have automated testing. This is a program that plays the game by itself and tries to cast a spell. Is the spell cast? Tries to equip an armor. Is the armor equipped? We have a tech QA department. This is a QA department that tests my changes before they are committed, so that I'm not blocking production in case I check in a crash or in case I make a game-breaking bug. This is one that I think is a bit sad, but that's just me. Is I went from going to having a limited knowledge of all code to having an extensive knowledge of limited parts of the code. Because of course, if there are only 10 programmers, it's very easy to be up to date with all the code that's checked in, so you have a great understanding of all the code. But if you have 100 programs, then it's just impossible. You have to be able to know a lot about the code that you wrote or the people that are working together with you. But with all these changes getting checked in every day, it's impossible to be up to date of everything for everyone. Maybe a bit technical, but we went from an object-oriented design to a more modular approach by using an ECS framework. Object-oriented is the way that most small companies usually do it. Back in the day, that was kind of the norm. But if you then have to implement more complex features, it becomes harder. So you have to figure out where in the puzzle it fits. Whereas the way we do it now is we have all kinds of different components. We have different systems, each with their own way, with their own functionality. And we can attach these components to different entities, which is of course something that, once again, I had to learn on the job because it didn't exist yet when I joined. And then finally, we changed from designing the architecture while coding to having diagrams, unit tests, and documentations before coding. So when I got a task, I would just sit behind the computer and start typing, and just as you go, Sometimes you notice that you make a mistake, or only at the end you think, I should have done that differently. But if you have a big team, once again, it's very important to think about these things up front. So now we make the diagrams beforehand, like, okay, which systems are we going to write, which components do they need, how do these interact with one another. We write a unit test to make sure that our code does what we think it does. We make, of course, documentation, because if I know how it works, okay, in a team of 10 people, you can explain to someone else real quick. Once again, 100 programmers, they can't all ask you how something works, so you need this documentation. I think the big takeaway with all of this is that big companies do not make big games. Big games are made by big companies. What I mean with that is that the game always comes first. It's because you want to make a big game that you need more people. And because of that, you need more of these processes. So it's not because the company is big that you need more leads or more directors or more producers. It's because you want to make bigger games. So the game always comes first. So, enough about myself. I'm going to give you some tips and tricks of getting started yourself. The first thing I can talk to you about, based on my experience, of course, is if you have a company that you are wanting to apply for, the first thing you do is you investigate the company, just like I did. Like, what games are they making? Do you actually like these games? Like, try them out. Because this is very important. If you work for days, months, sometimes years on a game, and you hate that game, well, then maybe this is not the company that you want to be working for. Try to figure out what technologies do they use. Do they use Unity? Do they use Unreal? Do they have a custom engine? Because that way you can also cater your portfolio better, and you can prepare yourself for the job application. A tip I can give you is look at the game credits. Usually at the end of game credits, companies list what technologies they use, and not just the engine, but also some middlewares. Maybe they use Substance Designer, maybe they use SpeedTree, maybe they use Maya. But if there's a software in there that you think, hey, I actually have experience with that, then that's something that's interesting to know for you. And you can also look at other job descriptions to get a lot of information. So let's say you want to apply for a junior gameplay programmer. Okay, also take a look at what a senior gameplay programmer is, or also look at what a junior engine programmer is. Maybe even look at what the artist requirements are, what the animator requirements are. Anything to get a better understanding of who is this company, how do they work, and what are they actually doing. And then maybe an important one, what is the company culture like? Like, how is it to work at that company? You can look up articles, videos, interviews, to just get a better understanding in general about the company, and not just the games that you're making. You can, of course, also reach out on people on LinkedIn and see if they respond. It's always worth a shot. So let's say you did all that, and you think, okay, I found my company, I did my research, and I know these guys, I want to work there. What's next? Well, the next thing, of course, is applying for a job. And the most important tip that I can give everyone, and it might seem like you're kicking an open door, but read the job description carefully. Figure out what is the most important for this job. Usually it's the thing that is listed at the very top. Because this is what the first thing that the people that are checking your portfolio will be looking for. So make sure you tailor your portfolio and your CV, or your CV, to what this company is looking for. Let's say indeed that you have a company like Larian that has a custom C++ engine. If you apply and you have a portfolio that only shows Unity projects, then that's not really interesting. Like, you need to be able to see that you can work at this company and you have the knowledge required to do so. You don't have to tick all boxes. Usually there are some nice to haves, which are of course not important. But it's never too late to learn. If you see some words in there or some softwares where you don't know what it is, be sure to look them up. Try to investigate. Maybe you have some free time to experiment with something. A lot of software packages even have free trials that you can just try it out and then get some experience that way. And then a very important one is make sure you stand out. Sorry. This is especially important for students who freshly graduated or are looking for an internship, because you have to realize that if you are applying and you are just handing in your school assignments, that there might be 15 other people from the same school with the same school assignments. And then you're not standing out. You have to make sure that your portfolio is somehow more impressive than the others. So also show us that you're passionate. Not just passionate about games, but also about the thing that you want to do. If you want to be a programmer, then show us that you're passionate about code. A great thing that you can do to show that is by having pet projects. If you have something that you work on in your free time, or for instance here, we're at a game jam. Game jam projects are always great, because it shows that you have free time. And what do you do with your free time? I'm programming, I'm making games. So it shows us that you're really passionate. So that's something that also helps you stand out in the end. Specifically for programmers, be sure to have code samples or a GitHub so that we can have a look at your code. Because for artists and animators, it's very easy. You just give your portfolio and people immediately understand that, okay, this is what you can do, this is what you made. But for code, it's harder. So if you do not have any code samples or you don't have a GitHub, then it's also harder for us to actually investigate, like, okay, how good are his programming skills? And then finally, be honest. You don't have to oversell yourself, but also don't undersell yourself. So we're not looking for the next C++ prodigy or anything. So it's okay to make mistakes. If you have some practice, you can show it. In the interviews as well, if you get a question and you don't know the answer, it's okay to say, hey, I don't know this one, because maybe there are follow-up questions where you do answer it. But also don't undersell yourself. You might have a project somewhere of which you think, this is pretty aggressive, I'm not going to put it on there. But in the end, anything that could make you stand out could be impressive to someone else. And then, I'm not going to talk to you about why I think you should join Larian, but I will tell you why I like Larian and why I still want to work at Larian. So first of all, I get to work on games that I love playing. Like I said, the type of games they're making are literally the type of games that I have been playing ever since I was a kid and fell in love with. And now I actually get to work on these games. So that is, of course, something very special to me. I think Larian has a great company culture. Like, the colleagues are amazing. We have the best CEO or creative director that I can think of. He's the nicest guy ever and he's really passionate about the games we're making. I get to learn and improve on the job. Because like I said, when I joined, it was this small indie company that grew into a AAA company. And I learned everything that I know while doing it. There are also a lot of opportunities. For instance, I now got the opportunity to move to KL to become an expat here and to mentor people. Like, that's an opportunity that a lot of people would only dream of, and Larian made it possible for me. And then finally, I get to work on games with an impact. And we get tons of fan mail, tons of fan art. There are people cosplaying like characters in our game, which just shows you that the games that we make actually moved them, meant something for them. And that's something really nice to have, that you know that the job you're doing also has an impact on people. And I can't help but wonder that maybe somewhere out there's like a little kid of about 12 years old that might be playing one of our games and thinks to himself, you know what? I don't just want to play games, I want to make them. Thank you. So in case it was not clear, we are hiring. Yeah, come on. We are hiring. So we're looking currently in the code department for junior game programmers, which I will be mentoring along with two of my colleagues who also moved to KL. We're looking for a junior engine programmer, senior engine programmer, and an intern position for tool programmer. And then I have some time for questions.
Hello. Okay.
Hello.
Hi. That was really insightful, thank you. I just want to ask, I think this is something I encounter as well, especially with students, is the lack of training or the expectation of being mentored while they still want to work for games. My question is, what is your take or your advice about that if somebody is trying to, they want to get into games and they have, let's say, basic knowledge of the programming and maybe even non-programming area, but what is your advice for somebody who wants training and they're like, can I get this kind of training and mentorship during the job, or should they do it before they apply, or how? Like, yeah, question.
I can talk about, for instance, the junior positions that we have right now. We are looking for people that are juniors, so they can be out of school. The thing that we, of course, want to see is that you kind of understand the technologies that we're using, but that's why we have the mentorship program, so that if you have the base knowledge, okay, then you can get started, and we can help you and guide you through the rest, like get you to know the technologies that you will be using.
Just a follow-up question as well. Should it be expected that they need to, that is the person that's applying or the student that's applying, that they are going to get that kind of training? Or just, let's say, in an indie studio, they need to just know that you're not going to get training, you're going to do it on the job. Like, should there be an expectation of it?
Sorry, could you rephrase the question?
Like, for example, let's say for example, between AAA and indie, right? Let's say AAA, you're already given that expectation of you're going to get training, you're going to get mentorship. But if you're in indie, you're not expected to ask to be trained. You're just supposed to just do it on the job. So my question is that, is it advisable for, let's say, somebody who wants to get into gaming, should they be asked, should they expect to get that kind of training if, in the job? Like,
but I think in general, there's nothing wrong with learning on the job, even if you don't have the mentorship. Because like I said, that's in the end also how I got started. We didn't really have mentorship programs back then because the team was just too busy. So learning on the job is of course always the best experience you can get. But outside of that, like I mentioned, you can work on as projects in your free time. You can try to get experience left and right. Anything that helps you to become better.
Oh, okay, that's great. Thank you.
Okay, so just it's a quick question for me. So, you mentioned that like the studio scaled up between original Sin 1 and original Sin 2.
Yeah.
So at what point do you flip the switch and go, drive-bys are no longer okay, we need to have real meetings now?
I think that's just a very organic growth. Because the moment you have more studios, then okay, you're in different countries or even in different time zones. The first studio we opened was in Russia, then we opened a studio in Quebec, we had a studio in Dublin, and then one in Ghent, for instance. Those are 4 completely different time zones, so you really have to work together. So it's almost,
So it's like from your personal recollection, was there a specific feature where you were like, okay, no, now we have to scale up?
No, I don't think there was one specific feature. It's just something that you notice immediately that
It was an ideation.
If we don't have proper meetings now, then we're just bottlenecked.
Thanks.
Hello, really like your talk. Upcoming engine programmer, building my skills. So I really want to ask some technical question. One of the main questions that I have is, what common mistakes you see junior engine programmers make? And so I can take that information to try not make the mistake. What are some couple of mistakes? Maybe it's something a skill they lack. Maybe it's a communication issue. Maybe it's some tool stacks that they don't know. So something specifically related to the issues, the common problems they face.
I think the most common mistakes you can see is that, like I mentioned, also that indie companies in general, is because you have an idea of something you want to make and you just start coding and code right away. But like doing some of that planning up front can lead you to better architecture. And then especially if you, for instance, I made my own engine, like I mentioned, it's a terrible engine. If I would have to redo it now, I would do it completely different because I just made it while I was coding and tried to basically be constantly hacking in features. So if this is something that you then want to throw out there in the world, it's better to just first think about how am I going to do this, what do I need, and how do things interact.
So the main takeaway is that have an architecture before you build it.
Yeah, that would be my first piece of advice.
And another thing is, Larian is hiring for gameplay programmers. Is gameplay programmers using Lua for scripting or?
The gameplay programmers are C++.
Also,
yeah. We have the scripters department, and they are making the quests and the behaviors of the characters. They use a form of Lua for that, but the gameplay mechanics are all written in C++.
Okay, thank you so much.
Problem.
Hi, thank you for the talk. I would like to ask, how do you specialize in gameplay programming?
By making games, it's
Is there a specific advice to people who want to improve their skills in gameplay programming specifically?
But I think in general, if you are using Unreal or you're using Unity, what you're doing basically is gameplay because you are not making the engine. The engine is there. You are making all the game mechanics. So that is what the game programmer will do as well.
Thank you. Hi, I'm actually a beginner game developer. So, as a professional programmer, can you give me an advice like how we can improve our programming knowledge, like daily routine? Like for example, like we do workout for 1 hour per day, like a daily routine for improve our programming knowledge.
Just in general, just get as much experience as you can. Like if you have a weekend free, if you have some time off between school or between whatever, any time that you spend coding is something that you learn. And there are people, like I said, game jams are a good example of that. You just spend the weekends making a game. Is it a good game? Is it a bad game? In the end, it doesn't matter. It's just experience that you get.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm aspiring to become a programmer director. And honestly, my portfolio right now isn't very good to put for me. I've graduated long ago, and I should be building my portfolio since I have all those times to build my portfolio, but I didn't. And I mostly spend my free time updating media, doing some scripting in Python and Lua. Despite all this, yet from yesterday to today, this event has been life changing for me. So, to say the least, I'm very passionate person, and I really wish to join the programming industry. So, at the very least, I hope you will consider hiring me.
Well, there are positions, so you can definitely apply. Very good.
Thank you. I will definitely apply.
Hi, I'm a student from Multimedia University. So I will be starting my internship next semester. So the question I want to ask is, what is tool programming like at Larian Studio? Does it require a background in software engineering?
Well, our two programmers, they work in WPF, so it's WPF, XML, and C#, I think, mostly. But they also interact with the code in C++. So for tool programmers, you need some C#, you need some C++.
Is it related to how much is it related to gameplay programming?
Well, that's it's a different field to be honest, because so the tool programmers, they're making the editor. So if you would have Unreal, like they make the editor of Unreal, not the engine that powers it, not the features that the game has in it, but the actual editor.
Okay, then thank you for your clarification.
Hi, can I ask, what is a game that you recommend everyone to play, or a game that you think everyone should at least try?
If you want to go to Larian Studios, then I would say Baldur's Gate 3.
Alright, thank you.
Hi, you said that you had a very big passion for RPG games, but if someone has a more broader passion for a lot of other games, what would you recommend them do instead of like trying to focus on a specific genre?
Can you?
So let's say like someone is trying to go for multiple types of genres. What would you recommend they do instead of trying to focus into one genre?
But the thing is not you have to focus into one genre. That's not what I meant. But you have to find a company that makes the type of games that you like to play. Some companies, of course, do make different types of genres of games. So it's definitely possible.
Okay, thank you.
Hello. So it's a bit of a technical question because I joined a bit late, but I saw you guys develop a custom engine. So why make a custom engine instead of using something out of the box like Unreal?
But the main thing is, of course, that we own the engine, so we can make the features in the engine exactly like we need them in the game. If you have an engine like Unreal or Unity, there's of course nothing wrong with it. But a lot of the development time is also going to features that you might not need in your game, or there might be updates. If you encounter a problem, then you have to wait for another company basically to solve your problem. Whereas if you have your own engine in-house, you make it specifically for the type of game that you want to make. If there's a problem, then the people that developed it are right there and they can try to fix the problem. So it's just that it's a choice that you make to be more to cater towards the specific game that you make.
It's a better long-term option for a company.
Oh yeah, it's a long investment. The engine that we're using now, we have been using ever since Dragon Commander, and it has been involved into all of the iterations. But yeah,
Is it based on like Vulkan or like an older framework?
it's custom built. Yeah.
Great talk, by the way. I'm just wondering, do you have time later to like see one of our games?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. I will be going around checking out some of the
Yeah, guys, we like to showcase a few of our projects, my friends over here, and our projects as well.
Yeah.
To like, see.
I will definitely be doing it around. There will also be some one-on-one talks here that I can do with people.
Sure. Okay.
Hello, good afternoon. So I roughly have like generally two questions. I'll just ask them. The first one I want to ask really is if you can explain to me a bit more about the job title of a gameplay programmer in specific, because I would like to know more about it. Since it's related to game design and concepts, right? I'd like to know more if they do more like reviewing with artists and game programmers about the game concepts and how things like they have to consider things like optimization or cutting down certain mechanics like if this thing's too complicated, simplify it, and all the other related stuff. If you could like give a brief explanation.
But so in general, like the gameplay programmers don't come up with the mechanics. That's the designers or the artists. They come up with the things. For instance, example of Baldur's Gate is they might say, okay, we want to be able to shove somebody off a cliff and they should die. And then based on that, you get to the code and you write the mechanic, which turn into what we call chasms, so that you have an overflow and somebody falls in there, they die.
So would that be the gameplay programmers, or would that be the people like the coders and like is there like do you separate the people who make the game design and obstacles and the structure of the game, and then with the people who makes the code to make that thing available?
Yeah, definitely. So we need to have the designers who come up with the features and they basically have the ideas. And then you have the gameplay programmers who turn these ideas into code.
I'll just try to keep that in my memory for now. So do you like do gameplay programmers also have to go through reviews of like looking through like do you think this matches with that the game concept?
So every time you have to run a feature, you first have to of course get into good communication with the person that requested it. And then, like I said, you write all your diagrams, you write all your documentation, double check with them, like, is this what you want?
So they do also write diagrams.
And then after reviewing their code, we have review processes, which means that there's another programmer that will go over every code that you write. They might find mistakes, so that you have less mistakes in your code.
Okay. Second question is one slide I noticed it's about how you mentioned that indie games and AAA, indie games uses OOP, like OOP related systems, while indie game uses ECS. I am aware of ECS being useful because it's scalable. It's much more easier than OOP because it's like apparently ECS is on table format. I wanted to ask is, can indie games also use ECS since ECS is also scalable? I think like,
definitely.
There has been like some recent newer game engine standard that also started using ECS because it seems to be they have their opinions that it's better, slightly better than OOP.
Yeah. No, but it's not that indie companies always use object-oriented and AAAs always use ECS.
Right.
It's like as Larian, like when we were still smaller, we were using object-oriented, and now that we're bigger, we're using ECS.
Right.
But of course, indie companies can use ECS without a problem. There can be AAA companies that still work on torrent, so there's also nothing wrong with that.
I see. Alright. Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay, I'll open to one last question. Okay, put down your hand. 1, 2, 3. Faster.
So like for Baldur's Gate 10, what engine do you use? I'm curious about that, but I read it is what engine? Infinity engine. Like how do you modify it to make
Well,
it?
so we have our own custom engine. So we wrote it completely from scratch.
You
have
wrote it
our,
completely from scratch.
yeah, we have our own editor as well, and we released our editor as well to the players so they can mod the games. And so the modding toolkit that we released is almost the same as the one that we actually use to develop the game.
From Divinity, from the predecessor, also you also use this
Yeah.
same engine. Okay. Thank you.
No problem.